Good evening, everybody. We are here to kind of give you a sneak preview of our draft Homelessness Strategic Plan. I wanted to give the community a chance to kind of see it and ask questions and give feedback before we present it to the City Council in June. I think it's June 25th. We plan to do that for adoption. But already this plan has had a lot of community input. And to begin with, I just want to let you know that the group that put this together, we had a community advisory group that represented a variety of people in Malibu, from the faith community to our social workers that work with the people concerned in Santa Monica, just residents who were concerned, who agreed to be involved, public safety commissioner, sheriff's department, just a broad spectrum. But so before we begin, I want everyone who's part of the planning group to stand up, face the audience, and let them see who you are. Everyone who's involved, stand up, turn around. So there's a lot of people who participated, and we tried to have a broad, fair group to represent all the different concerns and issues. Thank you. So what we're going to do now, so the purpose of the strategic plan was basically to try to coordinate all the efforts that were already happening in Malibu. A lot of you probably are familiar with the various things that were happening between the faith community and the dinners they were providing. We had the labor exchange. We had our outreach workers that the task force on the Malibu Task Force on Homelessness hired through the people concerned working. And so this plan was to try to take all of those existing efforts and build on those, coordinate, make sure that we're leveraging each other and working coordinated towards a common goal. And then the other purpose of the plan was to see how we can support and tie into the larger regional initiative. So this really all began with LA County Measure H, as you may be familiar with. It's a tax initiative, and cities were provided an opportunity to apply for a grant to do a homelessness plan. And so the City of Malibu, we applied for that grant, and we were eligible for $50,000. We got the grant last fall, and then we did a request for proposals to hire a consultant to help us facilitate that, because we knew this was a very sensitive topic, and it was better to get professionals who had experience working on the issue to help facilitate the process. So we did that. And then in developing the plan, we relied heavily on community input. I don't know how many of you saw that we had a community survey out there. It was available for about a month or two where people could go online and provide their input. We also, with the community advisory group, which is about 30 people, we did a special questionnaire for each of the advisory group members. And then about 5 people from a cross-section from city manager, manager at Ralph's, faith community, I don't remember who else got interviewed, but they did an in-depth interview with a cross-section of people too. So that's kind of how we got a lot of community input. And then the advisory group, we did 3 half-day strategic planning meetings where first we gathered, all the input from the questionnaires and the community survey, and the consultant put it together and then present it to our advisory group. And then from that, we started building our general goals and action plans from all that input. So from that, we developed a vision. We all agreed that really the vision, so this is success. Vision is what we're thinking, this is what we want to see. We've succeeded when homelessness is declining steadily, people are finding permanent housing with services as needed, while public safety and health concerns are being alleviated. So that is our vision of success. We also identified some guiding principles. These are things that we all agreed were the basic principles we all believed in that we wanted to keep in mind as we developed our goals and actions. So they included things like make sure we have a clear plan of action. The plan needs to be flexible because we're going to be monitoring it over time. We'll adjust as needed. Long-term solutions is what we're looking for. We want to support permanent supportive housing options. Safety of the community is top priority. We all agreed that was very critical. Community awareness. We realized maybe we weren't doing, as a city, a good enough job with providing information about what was happening in the community to assist homeless people and address safety concerns. So that's something we all agree we need to do. And just the whole idea of having a tailored case management approach, or we do a field-based approach to the outreach workers, because we don't have like a center, or we don't have social services here. So we do a field-based model with our outreach workers from People Concerned who go out and meet homeless people where they are to try and connect them with services. So goal 1 is to reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness in Malibu. And basically, the actions that we have tied to that include conducting outreach to landlords to accept rental subsidies. Sometimes landlords don't always understand how that works. There are some incentives that are built in that some landlords, if they knew about it, they might be willing to take somebody with a voucher. So that's one of our action items. Establishing a flexible spending account. That item, what it's really based on is there is funding for, say, rapid rehousing. That's where someone has just become homeless, and you can, if they just need help with first month's rent, deposit, you can get them into a house really quick. Well, of course, like all government things, there's a lot of rules and regulations and requirements. So we thought, well, maybe we should have like a separate fund. So if someone's kind of falling outside of those rules and regs, we can step in and help assist in that kind of situation. Also exploring the feasibility of developing bridge and permanent housing. And let me just say, when we have the word explore, that's kind of code for long term. We know that's not an easy one. That's not something that's happening in the next couple years. Which, let me just say, this plan is really thinking about the next 3 years. And then in 3 years, we'll see where we're at and build another 3-year plan. So when you see explore, that means it's not that we're never going to ever consider it, but we know that's a long-term thing. So during this first 3-year phase, we'll explore those possibilities and see if we can make that happen. Also exploring creative housing solutions for more affordable housing. That could be along the lines of, I don't know, if people, the city does allow accessory dwelling units, and maybe possibly incentives for people who build a granny flat on their property or something like that to increase housing. So again, exploring these possibilities. We don't want to just wipe it off, the table right away, even though we know it's not something that's a short-term thing. So we're just trying to keep it out there as a possibility. Goal 2, prevent and mitigate public health and safety impacts. This is a really big one, because I think we realize the public safety concerns are really big. And if we don't address public safety, all the other really good stuff that we want to do isn't really going to matter much if we're not ensuring public safety. So we thought of a number of things to help with that. One of them being utilizing volunteers to help augment what we're already doing with the Sheriff's Department in terms of dealing with homeless individuals who are creating, public safety concerns. Also providing temporary housing during red flag warnings, because a lot of the safety concerns do have to do with fire. So that whole idea is thinking that when we have Santa Ana conditions, red flag warning, we know we're in high fire danger time. We're going to be addressing encampments, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, because we're also doing a homeless encampment management plan. That's is that the third or fourth one down? The idea being that we want to consistently go through and clean up encampments, because we just can't afford to have encampments in our hillsides. It's just not safe. The fire danger is too real. And so in addition to that, the one that I was talking about with the housing, that if we have people who are just some are just harder to get out than others. And so if we have to temporarily house them somewhere, we can maybe work with the county to get some at least temporary, vouchers for a hotel stay or whatever we need, especially during those times when we're really concerned. We had a few times last fall when we had, the winds were really up, the heat was high, and we knew that, at any minute, as the Thomas fire was burning, we were very vulnerable. So at those times, we really want to make sure we have as many tools as possible to reduce any danger of a fire starting from an encampment. Let's see. We're also looking to see if we can try and increase access to sanitation facilities, because there is a concern about that. As we all know, if you are not housed, you're dependent on finding your own bathroom facilities. And not always is it an actual bathroom facility. So it does create a public health concern, and we're very conscious of that. And so we want to see if we can come up with ways to increase access to sanitation facilities for people. Also, we're going to be looking at, mitigating potential impacts from the homeless meal services that are going to be at the courthouse. We know that people do have some concerns about that, especially since it's right where we had the little fire that started from an encampment over there. So one of our action plans is to make sure to have a plan to mitigate any negative impacts from that service that will be happening there. We're also going to be seeking opportunities for safe haven parking areas, which I've heard there's some good possibilities in the mix, and hopefully in the future you'll hear some announcements on that. Establishing peer advocate group for the homeless, and I think the idea behind that was to identify some homeless individuals who can help us and work as advocates to promote safety within the homeless community. So goal 3 is implement programs to prevent homelessness. I don't know if you realize this, but it actually can happen in Malibu, and I actually lived through a very real example last summer. A woman called me and she was about to become homeless. She had been renting a trailer for 27 years, $600 a month, and she had gotten an order to vacate because the property owner had passed away. And she had a job here. She didn't drive, so she needed something to rent in Malibu so she could keep her job. Well, it got very close, very, very close, right up to the last minute. She got an extension. She was going to be kicked out in December. Long story short, through the help of CART, the Community Action Resource Team, volunteers, we managed to help her. But it really brought to light the fact that we need to remember there could be members in the Malibu community who something could happen and suddenly they find themselves homeless. So we thought we need to come up with ways like a number of people could call if they're worried, so we can get them connected to like the CART or whoever to assist them, and maybe have a little emergency fund to help with first and last month's rent, moving costs, things like that. So that's part of what this is all about, because it is actually a real possibility here. Even in Malibu, with all the affluence here, it still could happen. Also looking at reducing any impacts from short-term rentals on this. It's the short-term rentals has many issues related to it, but one of them is just the general reduction of housing. So trying to see what we can do to mitigate that or reduce the impact. Providing incentives for providing affordable housing units is another action. So goal 4, providing coordinated outreach and access to supportive services. So as I've already mentioned, we're embracing a field-based model for outreach. There's also the homeless meals program that's going to be occurring at the courthouse. It hasn't started yet, but I'm hoping maybe in about a month or so it will be starting. It's just, as I say, since we're using the county courthouse, whenever you're working with government, you have to tack on about 3 months to anything. It takes time to go through all the bureaucratic conditions you have to satisfy, but it will be starting. But that program, it's going to be almost like a mini Homeless Connect Day, which how many of you are familiar with Homeless Connect Day? It's actually next week, next Wednesday at on the 30th from 10 to 1. I think you've got enough volunteers now, but it's a day where homeless people can come and get connected to services. And so kind of modeling off that program, because it's very successful. So the meals program that the faith community has been doing, we're going to try to involve some of those services in there too, so that it's also an opportunity for those homeless individuals to get connected to any needed services. Let's see. We're looking at possibly partnering with Pepperdine University. They have students up there who are always looking for, experience. So trying to maybe, leverage that right here in our community to help, increase our capacity for outreach. Also expanding access to case management services. And that's somewhat happening just through LA County, through our LA County partners. They've been hiring lots and lots more outreach workers. So taking advantage of those county resources to increase the number of outreach workers we have available in the area. So goal 5, we have increased community awareness of the Malibu Homeless Initiative, its progress and concern. So we plan to try to have some regular community meetings, at least give people an opportunity to weigh in as we're moving forward, because we're going to be monitoring how well we're doing, because I think you can't just have a plan. My biggest pet peeve is to have a plan and it just becomes this little thing that sits on your shelf. For me, it's a work plan. It's my project plan. I want to be able to monitor and see how are we doing. And so we want to involve the community in that, because we can't just sit, with our little group or in my office and know how we're doing. I'm going to need feedback from the community, and that's going to be in the form of maybe community meetings and maybe some follow-up surveys in the future. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but we're going to want to know if we're on the right track, if we need to adjust our strategy, what's working, what's not working, that kind of stuff. But we want to make sure we're engaging with the community. We've already set up a website on the city's website. We'll be posting, things there. We've developing, frequently asked questions. So we're going to be developing a lot of materials for anyone who's interested in finding out more. We'll be doing all that. So goal 6 is advocate for systemic changes to strengthen efforts to prevent and reduce homelessness. A lot of this has to do with kind of the city getting involved with advocating for legislation that's happening at the county, state, or federal level, because I think we all recognize that we have systemic problems. There's problems with the mental health system. There's problems with the criminal justice system. And there's things that we can do as a city to, working with other cities to, ask for changes to these systems. So that's what this one's all about. Goal 7. This one's the bureaucratic one. Develop a governance structure to oversee and support implementation of the plan. So we have this really great advisory group, and we had so much energy in our last meeting. It's like everyone's like, we can't stop. We need to keep meeting. And we're like, great, because we all decided that we needed to establish like a working group who continues to meet, at least on a quarterly basis, or more often, maybe more often in the beginning, so that we can really keep this ball rolling, and the group will oversee the implementation of the plan. We'll get together and see how we're doing, go over the measurements we've identified to see how things are going. One thing that's also going to be happening, it's same program, but different grant. It's Measure H money, but we got a separate grant for us to do regional coordination with our neighbors on the other side of the hill. So we're going to be pulling them in and trying to coordinate, because it doesn't do a whole lot of good if we're doing, certain things here, but they're doing it differently over there. We need to all be coordinated so that we're all kind of on the same page and working in the same direction. So we're going to be doing that kind of coordination. And then we're also going to be, with that grant, they wanted us to hire someone to increase our capacity for doing regional coordination. So we have actually identified in the city's proposed budget an assistant for me to help with all of this work to implement the plan. Before we go back and I start getting input on anyone, I wanted to go over the performance measures that we've identified. So this is how we're going to figure out how we're doing. We'll be looking at the number of people experiencing homelessness, which this one we have the official number, or if you want to call it official, that we get through the homeless count every year. So we'll be using that as a measure. But then we'll also we can do informal counts as well, just in terms of how many people our outreach workers, they keep track of how many people they're interacting with. So they have a kind of a sense of how many people are here at any given time, because it's transient. It changes, people come, people go. So using those two things, that's how we'll measure the number of people experiencing homelessness in Malibu. And then also the number of homeless that are off the streets. And that comes right out of the reports from our outreach workers. They keep really good records on that. Then also looking at the number of sheriff's department calls for service. They now have a code that they use, because in the past it wasn't always hard to tell. They'd have to really dig down in their records to be able to really see, but now they have a code for issues that are related to homelessness. So we'll be able to use that to also see if we're reducing those calls for service. The number of known encampments, and I had to put known in there because we don't always know about all. We look and we'll go and hike around. So we'll do what we can with managing the ones that we know about, but you can't manage the ones you don't know are there. But we will be, with our encampment management initiative, we're going to be cleaning out encampments monthly. And so we'll have a good sense of how many are out there and how many are staying clean, and then how much, we'll have an idea of how that's going if we have people who just keep coming back. And we know it's going to happen, but we're just going to do the best we can to try and keep encampments at a minimum so that we can reduce any fire danger. Also, the number of residents prevented from becoming homeless. So if we get any records, of people who have, reached out to us for assistance, that will be counted there. And then the number of homeless who consent to services. Because as you may know, not all homeless people are really interested in services, and it takes a long time. Our outreach workers spend a lot of time, and the faith community spends a lot of time building relationships with folks and trying to slowly get them into the idea, because you have to build kind of a trust. And, one day, you can go years and years, and then one day they're just ready. They get tired of it, and they're ready, and they want to get out. So looking at the number of homeless who consent to services and are on track, because it takes a while. You don't just go homeless to housed in one day. It takes a while. It's a whole process. And if anyone has questions on that, we have the people here who can tell you how that works. But it can take a long time. And even when you get your voucher to get into housing, even takes time, because you have to wait until housing becomes available. And that involves a landlord being willing to take the voucher. So those are the things that we identified that could help let us know if we're on track and we're doing well.